Welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas, a video series we created to help you get clear on what's really holding you back from the life that you want.
I'm Ivana Robinson, a certified life and leadership coach. I specialize in helping clients own what it is that they really want and give fewer fucks about what other people think. And I am the co-host of Reclaim the Retreat.
And I am Adelia Abora-Shade, the other co-host of Reclaim the Retreat, as well as a financial confidence coach, relocation specialist, and solo travel enthusiast.
And we're here today. This is day 2 of our 12 Days of Christmas series. In our last video, we shared the central theme of these videos with you, which is 1 year from now, if your life were more fulfilling, what would be different? And we asked you to give some thought to that. So maybe you did. If you did, great. But we asked you to give some thought to that. You know, what would you change? Perhaps what would you keep? Yeah, it's a big question. It may even be overwhelming to think about.
I think so. Particularly if you're not in the habit of pondering such a grandiose kind of question. And let's be real, the lives that we tend to lead do not leave a lot of space for contemplation, reflection, that kind of stuff.
No, not at all. And I think for many of you watching, the idea of spending that time with self and really being introspective in that way, maybe something you're not used to doing and maybe just generally feel uncomfortable. And I think that's normal. I think it is normal to do things differently and feel uncomfortable about that. I think having to ask yourself the hard questions, you got to make space for the feelings that come up with that as well.
As they say, feel the feelings.
Feel the feelings, yes.
Nothing wrong with that.
So thinking about, what might make your life more fulfilling, it involves dreaming. It involves thinking of what could potentially be possible for you, what you want to be possible for you. And that's just scary. That can just be very scary to think about the desires that you have, let alone allowing yourself to own those desires.
And I would say it's not necessarily an easy thing. I know for me personally, dreaming, considering possibilities that were not my reality.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I don't know how to do that. I don't know if that is still true, but there was definitely a point in my life where I struggled with that because it wasn't easy. It wasn't like all these ideas and things, desires just flooded into my brain because I said, I'm ready to think about this. It took work.
Yeah, no, reality can lay you flat on your back. So I definitely understand why, trying to think outside the box or really leaning into that desire or pleasure side to think about what might be possible for you, why we don't do that. Because quite often, a lot of things we want for ourselves don't happen, right? I think it, from a societal perspective, comes off as very childish. Right? To be like, oh, dreaming, what is it you want? Who cares? We got bills to pay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It starts very young that we actually kind of not beat the dreaming out of people, but we discourage.
We stomp on it for sure.
Because some child tells you they want to do this thing, and what's the adult's response to that? Well, how are you gonna get a job doing that? Oh, that's not a job. How are you going to make money? As if those are the most important things in life, because they're not.
Yes. And so I think I want you, if this relates,
resonates.
If you resonate with this, and this is maybe some of the feelings that you're coming up with, I want you to take a minute to think about what is the thing that you maybe really want, have always wanted, right? Thinking about that little kid who maybe had a little more freedom, was less inhibited. What were the things that you were thinking about, dreaming about, thought, just had in mind for yourself, where did those things go? Why do you keep them hidden? What are those things you kind of have to remind yourself of? I'm a firm believer that we all come into this world knowing who we are, and we spend a lot of our adulthood trying to get back to that person, right? Between family stuff, culture stuff, society, right? We are formed into a very specific idea of what it means to be successful, be a person, be whatever the things are. And it is really important that we do the work to get back to our original selves, because we have so much to share with the world, for sure.
Because what you just said made me think about how often when we talk to people and they talk about like, oh, I had this dream. The dream is always still there. It's just like pushed down and hidden behind some curtains. But it's the desire. I can't say like in this part of my life, none of the desires and the things I'm trying to do are new things.
Yeah.
The things that I always wanted to do, but I let life and other people's things get in the way of that.
Yeah. Some examples.
Probably the biggest one, moving abroad or living abroad. That was something I always wanted. I can remember being fairly young talking about I was going to move to Canada. Deep down, I've always known the U.S. was not the place for me. I might not have had the vocabulary, the language to explain that, but I knew. So that was something, it was in there, but I didn't really spend time and think about how would that work? How could I make this happen? Because in my immediate reality, I just didn't see it working, so I just pushed it to the side.
Yeah, I can relate to that. About 4 years ago, I quit my corporate job, and it had been at least 2 or 3 years where I was like, this isn't the right fit for me. It wasn't necessarily a bad environment or a bad job to have. I just knew it wasn't the right fit. But you don't just be quitting jobs.
Well, no, that's not what society will tell you. You're absolutely not supposed to do that.
Yes. And you're supposed to have answers, I think, is really it. And dreaming sometimes is about letting yourself not have the answers. It's about being able to figure it out, or trust that you are able to figure it out, as opposed to, I know exactly the path forward and every step of the way.
That part. We often get caught up in the, how do I make this possible? How do I do this? And don't allow ourselves to fully spend time in the, oh, this could be possible. I'd love to try this thing, because immediately we go to, well, I don't know how to make that work.
Yeah.
And it's not about the how. That shit will figure itself out.
Quite often. I definitely relate to that. I think we tend to have very binary thinking. It's I have this job or I am destitute, right? Not considering that there's a million different types of jobs in the world. Not considering that there are many ways in which one could make money. Or for you and moving abroad, there's so many ways in which that can look, right? There are the people who move to one country and that's it for them. There are people who spend parts of the year in different places, but it's really just letting yourself kind of feel it out a little bit, letting yourself believe it is possible in order to kind of figure it out.
And I think as you're doing this, you might have some desires that surface that your immediate reaction to them is, that's a desire I shouldn't have, like getting a divorce. Get the divorce. Because I'm gonna tell you, nobody thinks about getting a divorce, and it's not a good idea for them. You don't end up there thinking that thought if it's not the move. But I know that there's a lot of judgment and like moralistic value assigned to that because of what you're supposed to do whatever to make it work, blah blah blah. So if you find that a desire surfaces and your immediate response to that is, oh no, that's a bad thing, I shouldn't do that, fight that.
Yeah.
Spend some time with exploring why you want this thing. And I think you'll find that, no, it's not a bad thing, that it is probably something you should pursue.
Yeah. I think in addition to the judgment or like expectation of others, there's also just our own self-doubt that can come into play of, I am not capable of, that thing is not for me. And that is also something to be questioned, because that is quite often not true. Maybe, you don't have all the pieces today, right, to make that thing possible, but that is a very different place to be in than I can't or it is not for me. I firmly believe that pleasure is our birthright, and so you get to lean into that. Yes.
There are so many people who would think what you just said is like radical and revolutionary. The idea that we would be deserving of anything simply because we're here.
Yeah. Like, you're here, your worth is inherent. Like, we get to live the lives that we couldn't even possibly dream of, right? That are that big, should you choose to pursue that.
And it can be scary contemplating like this thing that seems so big, so grand, so difficult.
Yeah, but those are really the dreams that often matter the most. And as we've kind of stated, the first step here is making them possible. The first step to making them possible is really to start to allow yourself to feel them, to stop keeping them a secret, even if that's not verbalizing them to someone else. Maybe say it out loud to yourself. Maybe you write it in a journal. But you gotta own and let yourself, I want this thing.
And so that means if you're gonna own these things that you want, you probably are gonna have to do some reframing and some unlearning and some relearning in order to, I guess, envision what actually is possible, to allow yourself to dream more boldly. You have to reframe your idea of what is possible. Quite often we get so caught up in this idea of like, you can't be what you can't see. And I don't fully agree with that. Why not?
Because if that were the case, there's a lot of things that particularly as Black people, Black women, we wouldn't be, right? It's 2024 and we are still in the world of like firsts and onlys for Black women in so many different fields or ideas or whatever. And so if I'm stuck on, I haven't seen someone who looks like me do this thing, or I haven't seen someone, period, do this thing, then that thing is never going to happen. Like, someone has to be first. Someone has to give it a try. And there is no reason that person cannot be you.
So a better place to come from would be, if I can dream it, I can do it.
I think so.
Okay. That's fair.
I think we get caught up in the, what if I fail? What if everything goes wrong? And it is negative confirmation bias. So it is very easy to go down that rabbit hole, regardless of the circumstance. But what if you stop to ask yourself, what if everything went right?
Nobody asked themselves that.
No. But why not?
No, because it has as equal of a chance of all going to wrong, all going to hell, as it does actually working out and turning out better than anything you could imagine.
Yes.
Both of those possibilities are equally possible.
Mm-hmm. I know. I think about, moving to Mexico. I worked my corporate job, and in my mind, me living and working abroad was going to be through that job. Like, I could not see any other way in regards to like supporting myself or having that be possible for me. And while I did end up going abroad, I lived in Belgium for 2 years. I hated it because Belgium, not Mexico. Don't know if you know that.
Number one.
Yeah, I knew I was meant to be in Mexico City. Like, I had stepped foot here, fell in love. But because I was asking the question of how do I make this job fit the life that I want, the life that I know that I should be living, I wasn't asking the right question, right? I was in this binary of like, I have this job or I have nothing. When in reality, the question should have been, what do I need to do in order to move to Mexico? What do I need to be able to support myself? How much money would it actually take for me to support myself in the life that I want to have when I go to Mexico? It took a lot of hoops and a lot of different ways for me to get here and to get there. But are there places where you could be asking better questions?
Asking the right questions, reframing, because that's eventually what happens,
Yeah.
right? You let go of how can this job get me there? Probably because you quit that job and you have any choice but to reframe.
Yeah, moving to Mexico was more important to me than the job. And so that just meant I had to be asking a different question. I had to be thinking about things in a different way.
I get this with some of my clients, particularly when we're trying to figure out, can I retire? Can I take time off? Can I take this sabbatical? And the number of women I've talked to who've been like, well, I haven't made enough money yet. I have some savings, but I don't have enough. And I think enough is one of those things we absolutely have to reframe how we think about it.
We have to question that,
We've got to question that, because similar to your situation, instead of focusing on, because first of all, enough, if you can't immediately define what that is, you're never going to have enough. And so, I'm thinking about a particular client who, it wasn't until we sat down, looked at some numbers, and all of a sudden they were like, oh, I do have enough money. Because if you'd have asked them before we talked, do you have enough money to do this thing, or how much money you need, they had no concept of that. They just knew they didn't have enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, money's a big one, because I think we don't realize how much of money and our relationship to it is emotional and not actually having to do with the money. Yes. So with all of that being said, what we want you to do is give yourself permission. What is the desire, the dream, the want that you are currently keeping secret because it feels too big, you are overwhelmed, whatever it is? How would you feel if you gave yourself permission to want it? If you said, I deserve this thing and I'm gonna have it.
If you feel so inclined, you are welcome to share in the comments, but you are absolutely not obligated to. We just want you to say it aloud to yourself. You don't owe us, you don't owe anybody else that information. But this is day 2. We will be back tomorrow with day 3 of the 12 days of Christmas. If there was something we said in this video that really resonated with you, or you think it might be helpful to somebody you know, feel free to share this video with them. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like. If you have not already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because there'll be more of this kind of good stuff coming to you. And you should also be on our mailing list.
Yes, that is really where the good stuff happens. Go to reclaimtheretreat.com to sign up for that. to find out other things that we're doing and being able to dive in a little bit deeper on some of these topics. We will see you back here tomorrow for day 3 of 12 Days of Christmas.